Hi everyone, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. It's Joel at Codebreak, and I've got a very special guest for you today. And we are going to be talking about working from home and what that means for businesses. Hi JJ, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Joel, thank you very much for having me.
You are most welcome. So, tell us about you, please.
So I am the founder and CEO of Order In. Order In is a remote work company in this, what we're calling the future of workspace out here in Silicon Valley. That's what we call it. And what we do is we're a platform for top tier remote workers and leaders of remote work, business owners, people who are leading remote teams, trying to kind of help everyone have what we say we're doing is we're building the better workday. And our current little tagline for the digital product that we've been focusing on the most at the moment, which is this membership club, is work from home, but not alone. And we're helping people have more community and structure, productivity, and kind of interpersonal support during their remote workday. So that's what I'm all about these days. I'm also a fairly recent graduate of the Wharton MBA program. I've dabbled a little bit in venture capital, and prior to all that, had a career in the tech industry with software companies and artificial intelligence. But my passion for the past couple of years now has been the way that we work, and all of the ways that I think it doesn't measure up. And we need to evolve with the way that work itself and all of our digital tools and expectations are evolving.
Yeah, sure. And I guess I don't know how well you predicted it, but 2020 has brought all of this to the forefront.
Yeah, none of us predicted it. I think no one predicted it. I certainly had a lot of lovely personal plans, a wedding that was going to happen.
Oh no.
And, it's all right, but a move that was going to happen to a new apartment. A lot of things that we did not predict. Probably my saddest personal thing that I had to cancel. And I'm very fortunate, of course, that I have my health and my safety and the comfort of getting to work from home. But our company was going to be doing a lot of in-person events as well.
Okay.
And those are definitely not happening this year.
Yeah, we've seen
none
that
of us
too.
predicted it, but I do think that the remote work revolution was coming. It's been a long time coming, and the evolution of the tools that allow us to do this, for better or for worse. We're talking on Zoom right now, and whether you love it or hate it, the availability of the tools and the increases in Wi-Fi speed, everything that's kind of allowed this to happen, we did see that coming. It's just happening a lot faster.
Yeah, sure. So Order In, you use Slack, if I'm not mistaken. And I guess Slack took off in the UK maybe 3 years ago. And a lot of people are on Slack, Facebook Workplace, Monday.com, that kind of thing. And I guess a lot of these resources have just made it so possible for you to have employees literally anywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something and that's actually, I think work from home is a bit of a misnomer. It's what most of us are doing at the moment. But there was a really great article in TechCrunch recently arguing this, and I completely agree, that work from home is sort of an unfair rap that remote work gets. Because, okay, we're in our homes, particularly for our safety right now. For most people, it's the easiest and most comfortable place to set up somewhere to work. But the real potential in remote work, in my opinion, is work from anywhere. It doesn't have to be, for so many of us, I think it's been an unintended corner of the living room, maybe.
Yeah.
Most of us didn't suddenly transition into beautifully appointed home offices that were already there, right? So, but I think it's the idea enabled by these tools that you're mentioning that you could technically take your laptop and go work just from absolutely anywhere. And if you check out the Order In website, this isn't even a pitch for my website. This isn't even like, oh, go check it out. But it's actually just the aesthetic of it. It looks like a farm. And that's my and my co-founder's personal dream. Our place that we would love to work from is the countryside.
Okay.
And so the world of options. Mostly post-pandemic, but there's a world of options now that you could technically have employees anywhere in the world. You could do your own work, be a digital nomad, anywhere you please, if the logistics work out.
I am definitely working from the countryside at the moment, I'll tell you that.
I'm jealous. That's my dream. Maybe the reality is less
Yeah,
glamorous.
I'm not sure you've experienced an English winter in the countryside.
Well,
So.
no, I've been watching this show, Snowdonia 1890.
Okay.
I don't know if it's this, these families go back in time and live in the Welsh countryside.
Uh-huh.
But the 1890s version, like everyone kind of pretends it's back in the day, and it looks quite challenging. I'm sure it's
Okay.
come a long way, but yeah, the winters look rough.
We're about an hour from Snowdonia, so
there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, no, the winters are cold. The autumn and the spring is wet, and the summers vary. So
on the cartoon farm on our website, I think it's always summertime.
Nice, like it. So something, whether it's work from anywhere, work from home, remote working, I think there's a strong argument that a lot of businesses are getting that wrong, maybe through no fault of their own, but they've been forced into something they weren't quite prepared for, and a lot of people are working in isolation at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's the exact thing, I think, is that we've sort of been thrust into this situation that most of us didn't choose. And this is something that I hear about a lot from friends of mine who, from business school, they work for big consulting firms, or they work for, these kind of large tech companies, maybe banks. And I was hearing kind of just as the pandemic was starting, these snippets of, we're considering trying out working from home, but we've never done it before. And so my company, insert big famous company here, says that it can't be done, and we're never going to do it because it's not our culture, or it's not possible for us. And then, of course, all of a sudden they were doing it whether they wanted to or not. And I think that is the situation that most people find themselves in right now. If you are a leader, you're dealing with a remote workforce, whether you intended to or not.
Yeah.
And the way I put it is that, and I don't even mean this to sound critical, because I don't mean any particular person, but as a society, we're kind of bad at working from home.
Okay.
We're still learning how to do it, which is different from saying that we don't like it. It's interesting. Most reports show that the majority of people, only 15% of people want to go back. The way that they phrased it was, go back to the way it was before, go back to working how they did before. Most people don't want to sacrifice some of the freedom and flexibility that they have now, but that doesn't mean that everything about it is great, or that we're really getting it right. I think the two issues that I really see, this kind of umbrella issues with remote work, and this is what I've been working on even, prior to the direction the company's taken now, but really in my own kind of research for the past couple of years. The first one is isolation and loneliness that you mentioned, people working from home in this isolated way. And I think that's by far the biggest issue facing us in the future of work and the direction that work is going. But the other issue is burnout. I know that most of my data is US based, so hopefully people can kind of extrapolate and say, okay, does that sound right to my experience in my own kind of local area? But for us, at least, the workday is 3 hours longer on average.
Wow.
Yeah. And in the US, we've now got about 69% of workers are experiencing burnout. That is, we've always been workaholics, right? So that's a 20% increase from where we were at before. 80% of people feel more distracted while working from home. So on kind of the burnout and the way the work is structured side of things, what we're seeing is, and tell me if this is true for you too, because I'm about to confess it on air to all of your listeners, but what a lot of us are seeing is this kind of workday that never really starts in a clear-cut way, doesn't end in a clear-cut way. So you're working all the time, but you're maybe kind of half working a lot of the time. You're checking something, and then you'll get up and do a load of laundry, or cook something, or maybe watch a little bit of TV in the middle of the day, depending on, if you're supposed to be doing something right then, and then find yourself still answering your emails at 9 o'clock at night. And that's a big part of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of took an active decision with our team and with the managers in our team to say, right, you must check in at 9 a.m. every day, and you must check out at 5 p.m. every day. purely to put boundaries in people's lives, because this
Mm-hmm.
is our second lockdown in the UK, and
Yeah.
the first one taught us a lot very quickly. So it was kind of, I got staff messaging me at 7 in the morning. I got staff messaging
Exactly.
me at 10 at night, and I'm like, no, we can't do this. So now we've kind of shifted from, I guess, 100-year-old kind of attitude of, are they at their desk and are they working,
Mm-hmm.
to what are they getting done, and as long as it gets
Exactly.
done, it doesn't really matter. And so they've got the freedom to work longer if they want to, but we're actively encouraging them to stop. We actively encourage them to go for a walk at lunchtime. It's kind of trying to put physical barriers in place to burnout, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on the most important part of that, in terms of what some leaders are getting wrong. And I think the biggest thing that leaders can do to make this a successful transition, well, there's probably two, but the first one that you're mentioning is, okay, what we care about is whether the work is getting done.
Yeah,
Are we meeting our goals? Are we seeing the impact on the overall business from this one person's work that we want to be seeing? And so, I manage a team remotely. A fun fact about my team, I've never met any of them in person,
wow,
ever.
wow.
I know. My two co-founders, I'm lucky to have two wonderful co-founders. They're both based on the East Coast, where I used to live as well. And I have yet to meet them in person. We video chat every day. I'm really excited for that, actually. So we've kind of had to figure this out for ourselves as a team and for the team that we're managing. But I think it's so important for leaders to communicate very clearly to your teams, to anyone you're managing, whether you're a small business owner and, like me, you manage freelancers. We have a lot of freelancers we collaborate
Sure.
with, or whether you're talking to full-time employees, but communicate very clearly, okay, here's the outcome I'm looking for from the work that you're doing. Here's why you should care about it. Here's why it makes an impact on our wider goals. Here's why your work is important. I think it's really difficult when you're not monitoring people. You're not going to swing by their desk and harass them. You
Yeah,
don't want to be asking them to do things that on their end of things, they're sitting there thinking, okay, that's so pointless. No one cares if this happens. This is stupid, right? You want them to be committed to what they're doing. Um, and then be very clear about how you're going to measure that performance on the other end. Okay, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. Here's why it matters. Here's how we're going to evaluate that, whether it got done. We're looking for, these specific outcomes. And then from there, like you mentioned, give people as much freedom as you can with when and how they're doing it. Because the bad road people go down that I'm completely against, and hopefully I won't upset my fellow founders in Silicon Valley out here who are starting these companies, but there is something that we call tattleware,
okay.
or nanny tech, technology that spies on your employees for you, basically.
Yeah.
That I'm very much against. And what you described in your workplace, I think, is one of the best versions of hoping people are keeping hours that are reasonable, right? That you want to know that they've gotten started. You want to know also, hopefully, that they're done and that they're living their lives and that they're taking a break. It can go down a really ugly path when the word that we kind of use to call this out is presenteeism, when all you
Yeah.
care is whether they're present in front of their laptop.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole kind of, I guess, when I first started my career, there were people that did less work than me but spent more time in the office than me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And,
We've all done that.
and,
And
then,
that's it's such an old school way of thinking that you'll succeed in business, or trying to, right? This idea that I'm just going to have butts and seats as much as possible, both from a managerial perspective. Oh, I'm going to really notice that so and so is the first person in and the last
yeah,
person to leave, and then from the perspective of employees who are trying to do a great job or trying to advance in their career and saying, okay, the number one thing I can do is be here all the time. And that's, I think it was the wrong path before, and now it's almost impossible unless you're going to seriously violate people's privacy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, software came out that had like a stopwatch on it, so you could sort of program in which client you were working on, press the stopwatch, and then basically your managers or the owners of the business would know exactly how much time you'd spent on that client, when you stopped, when you started. And all I saw was kind of the big brother oversight thing. And we're a creative industry, so it just stifles creativity. It creates pressure that's not really there, because it's nothing to do with deadlines. It's nothing to do with deliverability or results. All you're doing is making yourself feel better that that person is working in the time that they're being paid for.
Yeah, I so agree with you, Joel. And that type of tool is very commonly in use in the freelance world and in the US. And for some people, it makes a bit of sense if let's say you're a lawyer and you're billing by the hour. And some freelance platforms, things like Upwork, which is a platform that we use to hire freelancers, they do have you do that. And it's not just a stopwatch, it's a screen capture. It's watching your computer screen and making sure that you're actually working, or that someone could go back and check if there were to be a dispute. And I understand Upwork stands on that as a third-party platform. If you have the person who hired the freelancer and the person who is the freelancer disputing how much time was spent, and then you're stuck in the middle of it. But I agree, it's really just kind of not the way, especially I think creativity, like you made such a great point. How do you bill for the time that you're out on a walk and you're coming up with amazing ideas, right? Or if you're saying, okay, I'm going to start my stopwatch, but I'm just sitting here staring at the wall, fantasizing about my dinner. I mean, it's not the minutes that matter, it's the outcomes. I had a job a few years ago. It was salaried. And so we were not charging by the hour, where we had a boss who decided to want us to use this tool. In a salaried role, and like a role where, our hourly is not really relevant. And I played dumb. I pretended I could not figure out how to use it. I was getting it wrong, doing it some days and not others. I mean, I was fortunate I was not going to be fired for that, because I was good at my job, and that's what mattered. But I played dumb with it. I don't know if that was the right way to achieve that goal of not wanting to be spied on that way. But with these types of technologies, and there's even data around this, there's, interesting things people have seen, it just erodes trust. It really kind of ruins that trusting relationship, and your employees are going to spend plenty of time and creativity figuring out a way to evade that technology and to get around it and avoid it. And that's creativity and energy that you would rather they spend on, creating positive outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, we worked closely with an accountancy company a few years ago, and what they did, the employees stopped the clock when they'd done a day's work, but then they worked 2 or 3 hours more to make up for the stuff that they couldn't fit in within the expectations. And that's horrendous. That's the last thing we'd want as a company for our employees, is that, I can't do it in the time the boss said I should be able to, so I'm going to stop the clock on that time and then lose all of my personal life to finish.
And that's so demotivating. That's really, not to sound, I guess, too radical, but that's just wage theft at that point. If it is an hourly, at that point they should be compensated for overtime or really, and it comes down to us as leaders. You have to set goals that are realistic and communicate them. And you have to be someone that people aren't terrified to come to you and tell you the truth about, this isn't working, right? Like, we need more help, or that we're not going to meet this deadline. We need to make it more efficient somehow.
I guess in the UK, we maybe have the worst of both worlds, in the sense that most accountants would be salaried, but they would they would charge their time by the hour.
Oh, sure.
So then there's kind of incentive to keep the time as low as they can.
With some of the most, I hesitate to use the word elite, but some of the most sought after positions in the US as well, at, let's say, a large consulting firm. My friends who work these jobs that people are fighting tooth and nail to get, these very desirable positions, they work 14 hours a day, on a very regular basis,
Mm.
in these roles. Sitting over here in the tech industry, I'm looking at that and I'm going, man, I want no part of it. But I also look at it and I go, okay, we have data, we have evidence that it doesn't make people more effective, that the actual, like the result for the bottom line of the whole company, if that's all you care about, you're going to have a more profitable company if you're not burning out your employees. So, I mean, and that's just proven by facts. I think there's just this unfortunately kind of competitive cycle where everyone feels pressured by everyone else to continue working in that way.
Yeah, and kind of employee advocacy as well. If you've got a team of people that don't love working for you as much as they should, news gets out. People find out, and I think with remote working, that news could spread even quicker.
Yeah. Well, people have more. I mean, we'll see how it goes, certainly, but one of the potential outcomes of all of this is that people do have a lot more options of who they work for. I know it's something that's a hot topic in the tech startup world, is, on the HR side, people innovating and figuring out how to help companies hire more internationally and navigate, the legal requirements there. But theoretically, you could go get a job. It doesn't matter if that company's headquarters is in your city anymore. So the global talent competition is going to see a shift. Yeah,
tech, marketing, computer games. We're kind of seeing it already. Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, computer games. There's another one. The amount of kind of game studios that are getting in trouble for crunching their employees and trying to get games completed on ridiculous deadlines is insane.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone over what's wrong with a lot of businesses. What's the right way to do this?
Absolutely. Well, I feel so bad, Joel. I'm about to pivot right back into doom and gloom for a moment to answer that because, so my big opinion about the right way to do this, I'll throw this out there. I think it's with a real emphasis on human relationships and interpersonal support and acknowledging people as human beings.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of what we do at Order In. It's the idea that you don't have to do it alone. It's the idea that community matters and having a team around you really matters. That's one of the biggest parts of the joys of work. I think that when you think about what most people get out of working, why they want to work, there's really three things, I would say. The first one's a paycheck, right? Can't get around that. The second one, I think for those of us who, most of your listeners who are interested in marketing, who are doing information work, who might be business owners or leaders, for myself as an entrepreneur and for you as a leader and a thought leader, we have this wonderful thing we get out of work, which is that we get to feel like we're making an impact. We get to feel like we're working on something we care about and, have a professional pride in what we do. I don't think that's, unfortunately, I want that to be available to everyone. I think there are certainly plenty of jobs out there that people aren't necessarily passionate about, and it's the paycheck, certainly. But I would love for everyone to someday hopefully have access to that. But the third thing is the relationships that we form when we're working, is these friendships with our colleagues, maybe not friendships with our bosses and employees, because that's a bit hairy to navigate, but a sense of mutual respect, a sense of camaraderie and collaborating towards something. Even our wider professional networks, the people who we get to meet and say, okay, this person over here is doing something really interesting, and I get to kind of learn about it and be a small part of their professional world, and vice versa. I get to kind of put what I'm doing out there into the world. And so the part that is a little bit doom and gloom, I think that third sphere of what's really important to people about work, these relationships, is at risk in remote work. You made a point earlier, that people are isolated and people are lonely, and that is, in my opinion, the most serious issue that we're facing with remote work and with the entire future of work. Quick side note, when I talk about future of work, a year ago, that meant artificial intelligence. That meant automation and AI. When people
Mm-hmm.
used that term and it was a hot topic, we were primarily talking about AI, not remote work. So as we think about the way that work will evolve, even post-pandemic, the way that the type of work people do continues to change and the tools that we use continue to change, we're going more and more down this path where people are going to be working completely alone from a physical perspective, probably in a little room, if you're lucky, if you have a little room in your home that you can
Yeah.
work in front of a screen for very long hours. That's the future of work that we are kind of staring down right now. And we have an opportunity at this inflection point while things are rapidly changing to say, no, we want to take a bit of a different path. We want to think about, we're not AIs ourselves. We're not computers. We want to
Mm-hmm.
consider that we're still human beings and work like people and treat ourselves like people. And so at the very core of what this means, if you don't mind me being, I don't want to be cheesy and get philosophical about humanity, but at the core, that means the relationships we have with each other and the way that we collaborate with other people. So and I'm happy to dig into the tactical, go out and do it side of this, but my answer for the right way to work remotely is to do it together and to do it collaboratively and to make that your absolute top priority.
Yeah, that's something we've tried to inject into our team. It's not easy, but just that whole, if somebody asks me a question, I kind of reply, you can video call me, or you can give me a quick call. That's okay. And then like, oh, you're not busy. It's like, well, you would ask me if we were in the office. So it's okay to ask me now. There's no difference. The only difference is the barrier of the computer, I guess. And that's something we've been much better at the second time round. The
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, but it's that kind of getting used to the idea that you can collaborate over the internet, you can collaborate over the phone, and throwing ideas around is actually a really important part of your working day that maybe you took for granted when you were in a physical environment.
Absolutely. And I think it goes beyond, I think that most businesses want to continue to foster collaboration in a formal sense, even in that informal, that wonderful, you would lean over to your colleague's desk and ask them a question quite casually, or you would brainstorm ideas. But there's a whole world of interpersonal kind of human feedback that we get in that environment that exactly like you mentioned, that we take for granted. A very silly example, this doesn't matter at all, but a very silly example, I mentioned that my co-founders, we haven't met in person. It took months of working together before I realized we didn't know each other's heights. We had no idea like how tall so I have a female co-founder, Megan, she's fantastic, who I learned was, some 6 feet tall practically. And I had no idea. And it's interesting because it doesn't matter, but it's probably one of the first things I'd noticed about her when we met in person originally.
Sure.
So there's this whole world of feedback that we get from our physical proximity to other people that does matter. This sense of, maybe, I don't know, maybe I worry about this more than most people do, but I think for most of us, you can kind of tell when someone likes you, right? When someone's happy to see you, and you get that little bit of feedback. You walk into the office, people look up, they notice that you're there. I think I just outed myself as the person who's not first in the office.
Yeah.
I walk in, everybody else is already there. Absolutely guilty of that.
The person that worries if everybody looks up or not. That's
that too, right? But no, but you greet people in the morning and they say good morning to you and they smile maybe to see you, right? You get this kind of sense of feedback that you belong, that you are welcomed, that people are excited to see you. Maybe I think we've all had the experience that you're in a meeting with your long-winded boss. Maybe I'm the long-winded boss now. And you share a glance with one of your colleagues and you both know it means, how much longer can this guy keep talking, right? these little moments that you get feedback and that you have that reinforced sense that I'm part of a team and that I belong and that I have these relationships around me. And I think the tendency when we're isolated is to get in our heads and sort of imagine what other people will think of the work that we're doing or of what we say or of us, and whether you're very confident and you're imagining that everyone's sitting around thinking that you're wonderful or you're, worrying, which I think is more common. When I send this, I'm not sure if it's really what they wanted, or, I'm not sure what people are going to think of this thing that I'm sending to them. Whatever it is, we're making it up in our heads now and just kind of imagining it instead of getting that feedback.
We're really fortunate that as a marketing agency, that's kind of the life we live anyway. We're going to send some creative to somebody that isn't in the room, and we don't know what the reaction's going to be. So when we've gone to remote working, that kind of stuff, we're used to it. That's the one thing we're used to. But something that crops up for us is video call fatigue, where obviously you can interrupt each other quite a lot on a Zoom call, and sometimes someone has to kind of put a lot more energy in to get what they want out of the call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tough one, especially because I think a big part of the antidote to these kind of issues of isolation that we're talking about is more video calls.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. I think that prioritizing, how you want to use that time, because I'll be honest with you right now and the listeners, I'm grateful that we're having an audio conversation instead of a video conversation, because I have many hours ahead of me of being on video today. And I get a little dizzy, actually, eventually. Okay. I get paranoid about my own face. I've spent more time in the last year looking at my own face on camera than I would ever want to in a lifetime. I never want to see a video of myself again if I can help it. So, you do get that video call fatigue. Mm-hmm. But I think it's about making time in those calls to connect as human beings, right? And so while we might want to get the call to be over sooner and to be super focused on work, I think it a lot of the time can be more effective to take advantage of that video feedback and those sort of, those as close as we can get to face to socialize a little bit and to let people chat and connect. I was the queen of meetings that ended on time in my past. It was something I was very proud of. And I've let it go. I've really let it go. We have a 15-minute meeting. I come from an agile, software development background. Huh? So there's something from that's called the daily stand-up, and it's a 15-minute meeting, and you just have this very quick, everyone says, here's what I'm doing, basically. Yeah. And I let it get much more casual. I would ask people, okay, what are you working on? What do you need from your team members? But also, how was your weekend? Can anyone recommend a great Netflix show?
Sure.
And try to have those moments of connection, and then save some of that more efficient work talk. Like, I really try to ask myself, does this need to be a video conversation? And a lot of the time, if it's about a purely, deliverable oriented question, then a lot of the time it doesn't, and it can have a lot more clarity to make that a written conversation.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing, isn't it? That if you're kind of working on a task that's step by step, mm-hmm. maybe you're working on a Trello board or Monday.com or whatever it might mm-hmm. be, keep it there there and just go through the checklist with your colleagues. But in terms of, just giving one of your teammates a call to check in on them, ask them how they are, what did they have for lunch, that kind of thing goes a long way when you're working remotely.
Exactly. I think it's about, we're leaders and we're used to managing resources and we're used to managing people. So think of that time on a video call as a resource, and think about it as, okay, there is a natural human limit to how much video call time we can have and have be productive and genuinely useful. And then ask yourself, okay, how can I allocate this resource? How can I allocate my video time strategically? I want to use that time to check in with people about how they're doing as human beings. I want to use that time with making sure that knowledge isn't siloed, that I don't have 6 different people replicating 6 different versions of the same thing without, sharing information among them that could be helpful. I want to use that time with helping my employees or my colleagues talk to each other and not only to me. And that's something that's very important to me. I think as a manager, we can kind of accidentally just have these conversations that we schedule with the people who work for us, but kind of forget that maybe amongst themselves, they would have had more conversation in a physical office. And maybe no one wants to be that person who's adding another video call to someone else's calendar and bothering them, like you mentioned with your colleague, like, oh, give me a quick call because you would have asked me this question normally. But people hesitate to do that. They hesitate to bother someone, to interrupt them, like you were saying. So even almost assigning that, hey, you're starting a new project off, go have a 20-minute video call with like these other people and just check in with them before you get started, and like almost manufacture reasons for people to connect to each other. So that these aren't just like, one relationship at a time, but more of this group effect. And so these are just kind of all ways to think about, okay, what do I want to use that video time for? I think brainstorming, just general brainstorming, while maybe not the most efficient thing we ever do in life, great thing to do on video. Getting reactions. I think showing a piece of work on video is actually really cool, especially if you're doing it internally and maybe not to a client, but getting to see people's reactions to something you've done is fulfilling. It's,
absolutely.
It's gratifying. But then those conversations about, okay, who's doing this and who's doing that, and what are the specs of this brief or whatever it may be, like things that you don't need to do on video, don't make people sit through a meeting for it.
Yeah. Much like you shouldn't in an office anyway.
Ideally, right? But we still do.
It's horrible being the person in the room that the meeting is not about.
Has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to confess something totally off the wall. I miss it a little bit.
Really?
being the useless person in the meeting. I think this is such a fake complaint. I'm very fortunate. But being a CEO now, I'm really never in a meeting that I'm not in charge of, almost. It happens very rarely. And it's a little bit relaxing to just kind of soak it in and let someone else be in charge of the meeting sometimes. So I volunteer to sit in on meetings I have nothing to do with. I have no idea.
That's a good idea.
I don't know.
I always think if you could be like a non-executive director, but just for the sake of being there.
Just hang out.
Yeah, I'll come to your meetings, and if you really
I'll just come along.
If you need me to pitch in, fine, but I'd rather just sit there and watch you guys squabble.
I think I'm being very open with your listeners about the way that remote work and Zoom may have been making me lose my mind, right? That's such a crazy thing to think. We're all getting a little bit weird right now, I think. But it's so strange. I would love to sit in a room with other human beings without having any responsibilities right now. That would sound so good.
Yeah.
Such a random thing.
I can't remember the last time I did that.
Yeah.
I guess no, I can't. I can't think of an example. So, remote working and kind of getting it right. If you get it right, what's the impact on your team and on your business?
Oh, well, yeah, I think it's enormous. So there's a few categories of impact. The first one that I'm going to mention, of course, is your company bottom line.
Yeah.
Remote work is going well, going badly. I'm not sure. We're getting such interesting and contradictory and strange reports coming out of businesses about how it's going, basically. Some people are saying, okay, people are more productive than ever. Possibly that's because they're working all night, right? Some people are saying managers hate it. We're dissatisfied with it. I think we are definitely going to see that burnout. So if you're getting it right, I can say quite confidently, if you're doing well, then you are ahead of the competition. You have an edge on your competition right now. And the impact to your bottom line of employees who are productive, but happy, they're not losing it, and they're still being creative. I mean, purely from a business perspective, that's fantastic. But we also know that the impact of having a strong company culture is enormous, and having these friendships, I mean, just it makes your work so much more fulfilling. People are so much better off. From an individual perspective, you're going to have your pick of top talent. You're not going to be worried about losing folks, and your own, again, as a human being, as not just a management robot, right? Your experience of whether your work is worthwhile and how you feel about doing it every day is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I am in this, entrepreneurial ecosystem out here in San Francisco. So I do really enjoy taking that long look into our science fiction future. Right?
Okay.
But I mean, there is very much potential for a world here where there is more diverse and inclusive access to doing interesting information work, to doing the kind of cool work that we do in front of our screens. Hopefully we're going to be looking at a future where pretty much anyone living pretty much anywhere can be doing this sort of interesting, thoughtful, fulfilling work if it's the path that they want to pursue. We're looking at a future potentially where someone could pick up their computer and find some place on the beach that they want to stay for a while, or travel the world and not even have an apartment at all, provided that you don't have kids, right? That's always, if you don't have a family, if you have fewer responsibilities, you could travel the world doing your work from anywhere. And people are already seeing that. In terms of the future of work from an artificial intelligence perspective, there's pros and cons, and I think people do worry about the impact on how many jobs there will be and people losing work. And since I don't currently work for an AI company, I don't have to go out there and say, no, that won't happen, right? I think that it is a risk. But the upside is that ideally, the kinds of work that we don't want to do is the first thing that gets automated. And that is what you see, the kind of things that are boring and repetitive and take a long time. So we're looking at a future where the average person could, if we all kind of banded together and wanted this, the average person could have a 5-hour workday from anywhere in the world. And I think that would be such a beautiful future to end up with.
Yeah, and I think that shift, something we see in the marketing industry, that certainly people used to ask us how long something would take, so they could gauge how much it would cost. And now, because of automation, because of systems we have in our business, because of experience, because of AI, some tasks might only take an hour that maybe 10 years ago took a week.
Absolutely.
But they still cost the same. So, because it took that long to learn those systems, to implement that technology, to buy that AI. And we see that saving within marketing and within other businesses too, where essentially our day could potentially get shorter.
While you get more done. I mean, I think that's where the value creation, that sounds very cheesy and Wharton of me, but that's where the value creation comes in. That's why, you should be working fewer hours for more money, is the outcome that we're hoping to see, because what happens is so much more is being produced that's of value in that smaller period of time.
Yeah, and if your clients or your customers or your service users get the same result or better, then it doesn't matter.
Then everyone wins, and I think that's the outcome I think we're all hoping for.
You're hoping for, yeah. I think there's that fear, isn't there, that everybody's going to work the same amount to produce more, and I think even as a business owner, we should all push back against that a little.
Oh, absolutely. I very much. No, this is something that I'll take possibly slightly controversially, but a very strong stand on. There is no excuse with the number of tools and the amount of technology that we have now. There is no excuse for the workday not getting shorter. Honestly, I mean, and it depends maybe on what your business does, like what you do, but it is affordable to have these shorter work days, and that'll allow your people to do better work. There are some things you can't speed up. I think conversations with other people, if you have a type of role where you're talking to clients nonstop, you can't just speed that up a lot of the time.
Sure.
But there's so many types of activity that can and should become more efficient, and the everyday people doing that work should benefit from that. I mean, they deserve to, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a simple thing we implemented in our business Whereas if you want to speak to an account manager, or if you want to speak to a director of the company, you can have a link to our diary to book the call, but you don't just get put through. And I mean, that sounds archaic now, but the difference that made in productivity and in how effective those calls were and the positioning of the business was huge. And so we have managers in our team now who don't worry when the phone rings, because it isn't going to interrupt what they're doing then.
Absolutely.
And then when they do get on a call, they know exactly what it's about. They know they've already prepared for the call. They've got everything in front of them. And that's one way where actually you can save times on your face-to-face interactions and your calls.
Absolutely. And it's a better outcome for the clients as well, because they're talking to someone who's prepared, and who is not like startled by that conversation taking place. Who's like, okay, I'm here and I'm ready to answer what you need from me. Yeah,
exactly. I've already prepared. Yeah. And I guess something we had to learn in our business, because the nature, I guess, of entrepreneurs and business owners is a lot of the ways to beat your competition is to be the most responsive. So if you're the ones that do answer the phone or do get back to emails, you're probably ahead of 9 out of 10 other businesses. but you also have to remember that being responsive in itself can be a curse, and that actually better to just take a breath and go back with a better response than to try and think on your feet all the time. And that's a really interesting change in our business that I think a lot of businesses remote working will see.
I think everyone should be very thoughtful about how they're allocating their time and their responsiveness. It's something that we do at Order In. It's actually one of our members' favorite things we do is we help people structure their days so that they can protect a few hours every day that they're just doing work, like uninterrupted, deep focus work, which does not even include like emails, right? But like really producing something, really doing that work where, your phone is off, you're not looking at your emails, you're not looking at your Slack. And we really do help our members arrange their day so that they can be as responsive as they need to be, but start to understand that they have to protect that time. And what that allows them to do is just do a higher caliber of work. The average person checks their email every 6 minutes. Wow. And so if you think in your industry doing creative work, like how creative can you be in 4-minute increments? You're having an idea, but you're going to go check your email, right? Or you're having an idea and you're creating something, you're making something that could be beautiful, and the phone rings. And so having that protected time really improves the caliber of the work. It improves how much people get done. And it makes it even easier to be quickly responsive. Because if you think about it, getting a response a couple of hours later, if it's not an emergency, but you're still getting back to someone that day, they're not going to really notice the difference. But you'll notice the difference in your well-being and in your own productivity and your output.
Yeah, absolutely. So, JJ, you've been really generous with your time and your expertise. How does somebody get in touch with Order In or connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. It's an honor to get to speak to this audience and have a chat about these topics, which are affecting all of us. So I'm very accessible, honestly, as a person. Please feel free, if you're listening, to come chat with me on Twitter. I'm JJ Caffey. Similarly, on LinkedIn, if you look up JJ Caffey, I'm happy to to connect or to answer any questions. I'm easier to chat with, I would say, on Twitter, probably. But, you can follow me in either place. And then in terms of our company, Order In right now, who we're targeting are top tier remote workers and the managers of remote teams. We do have an admissions process. It's a little bit picky, but I'm sure that your listeners would probably qualify. We're looking for people who are highly effective at what they do, just really great at what they do, but also have a lot of empathy for other people. And finally, for people who are excited about what the remote workday could become. If people are interested in what we do at Order In, you can find us orderinclub.com. Even if joining the club is not for you, on our Instagram and on our blog, we do put out resources that I hope anyone working remotely could benefit from just casually following as well.
Awesome. JJ, you've been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Have a wonderful rest of your day.